I always learn something, even though I've seen this presentation a number of times. Thank you very much to both of you.
And I would say the same for myself. It's always very interesting and reminds me of what a positive future we have. And I can't wait to be on our planet and not have pollution and breathe clean air, and everybody else on our planet have that same experience. And that's what our future is all about. The technology exists on many of these other planets in the Interplanetary Confederation. They've learned how to utilize this technology and blend that understanding of science and spirit. And that's what we have to look forward to and what is so needed on our planet. Now, what we're going to do next is watch another video montage. And this is of a particular contact that Uriel had with one of the interplanetary planets, Rani of Osnus. And what's exciting about this is when she contacted all these planets, she sat with two students, one at a time, who served as subchannels, and they would open up their consciousness while Uriel had her consciousness open to start this interaction with these spiritual polarities on the other planets. And she worked with them to find out what was wrong with their planet and what did they need help with. So this particular contact is the second contact that she had, because she contacted them over the course of about 2 months?
Yeah, or even less than
that.
Yeah.
And in the short period of time that she contacted them, like she might contact them on a Monday, come back on a Wednesday and say, I want to see how Rani is doing on Osnus and what progress they've made or what help they need. The interaction was really spectacular, and it's all recorded on audio. It's in book form. And we also have a website where you can learn about the interplanetaryconfederation.com and hear short clips of the audio sections of her interactions with these planets. So this is really exciting that we're going to see this. And this is just one of 32 other contacts.
So I can't wait. Let's go.
So we shall contact Rani of Osnus.
Yes, I am Rani.
Greetings. Greetings, Rani.
Very, very honored I am to have you come in almost unexpected manner.
Well, I just thought we'd stop by and see how you are getting along, and if there's any way or need for another little push that we can give to you.
It is the way of spirit that you should know of my need. I have just become aware of the karma that I have made for myself by the actions that I have been solely responsible for these past hundreds of years, or many hundreds of years.
Yes.
And had not given much concern, or had not even objectified my past on this planet. I was so taken up and so rejuvenated and so brought back to the reality of life that I could only think of the application of the science of the infinite of Unarius to the peoples here. But I have somehow or other, while studying and applying these principles in a projection that I have recently completed, had a visible, startled realization that it is not a simple matter to redo or readdress the wrong that I have so done. So that has put me into a position of remorse. And I understand that this is not to be, but that it should be a recognition, and then to go ahead with positive steps. But such as it is, this has happened just recently, not within the last hour.
Yes.
So I am not surprised, but I do know the powers that reside within you and your great intelligence that knows all.
And don't forget, we always have the lens to call on, you know. We don't. We have this wonderful lens to put us in touch with those who needs our help.
Yes, truly so, but I had not thought of using the lens for my own needs.
I'm speaking of from the other way. I too can use the lens to call on those who are in special need.
Yes,
This
of
wonderful
course.
lens can be put to use in many purposes.
I didn't know that.
But I am so happy that we came at the right time whereby we could add a little push. And I'm sure before we leave this contact, you will be feeling better. Now, first of all, what you have done is the first step. Recognition and regret for past actions is a first step. We must take a good look in that mirror of our past before we can take the step out of get our foot out of the mud and move forward. This is a very first, and you are most wise. Now, of course, it is even wiser that we do not permit ourselves to maintain any length of time in this particular negative state. For when you understand truly how man is either oscillating, how he's oscillating positively or negatively, the bias is either from the past or toward the future, that you would not permit not one moment to become negative. What do you think would happen to all of the work and all of the planets and the Brotherhood were I to become emotionally involved? What do you think? The bottom would fall out of everything. So you see, we must learn to direct our thoughts and cannot be victims of our past any longer. Once we have learned these vital, life-changing principles, we must use them and put them into effect. And right now, you must learn to direct your thoughts. May I tell you the way that I have learned to get myself out of any negative oscillation in the many, many years of the past? I'm not talking about the present, for I have not been personally involved in emotional attributes for quite some time. This is what I would do. When any negative appearance would make itself known upon the surface of my life or consciousness, I would immediately become involved in some other positive expression, no matter how slight, but change quickly and do something positive, no matter what it is. I can remember when I was a very young girl and negative situations would confront me, I would quickly jump to the fore and get involved in some positive expression, some new cycle. This way you set new cycles in action, and you quickly change the bias. Now this is the most important concept of changing your bias that you could ever experience. You see, when we are thinking negatively, your whole psychic anatomy oscillates in a negative way. And you lose more ground than you could gain in many years or even lifetimes. You can't afford to be negative, dear Rani. You can't afford it for your own benefit. And if you are not oscillating at a top peak or top pitch or high frequency, you cannot be of help to your brotherhood or your people, for they feel your vibrations and will likewise oscillate. So it is up to you to keep yourself up on this very top rung of the ladder by being in tune with the infinite, by being consciously aware and practicing at all times the principle. Now, let the past be in the past. Don't ever again enter into that in a remorseful way. You know it has been done, and your recognition has unlocked it. Now, do not again permit yourself to oscillate with that past negation. Promise?
Yes, it is a promise.
Okay. I'm going to expect you to do it for your own benefit and the benefit of all those with you.
And the whole idea
is for everyone to realize that they can help other people by their positive attitude, because you're positive, your lens is opened up and more light comes through, and that light carries information, and that information is intelligence. And the intelligence comes from higher dimensions. They have attained cosmic consciousness.
Each of these banners are representing one of the planets of the Confederation, and the person holding the banner and representing that planet is acting as the polarity of that planet. And at the time when these spaceships actually arrive, it will actually be that polarity, that leader from that planet that will be coming, or the ambassador, who will be presented to the world as representing that planet and saying, I come in peace. I come to share what I know and can be of benefit to the people of planet Earth.
And the other one is from Israel. Dear friends, I hope all of you will understand that because of the great distance in the miles between Israel and California, it will be impossible for me at this stage to join in the coming aforementioned event on October 13 through 15 in El Cajon. But in thought, I hope to be there, whilst wishing you a successful conclave, which will usher in a new era when and where love in action will be demonstrated in all its glory. I'm writing these lines because being conscious of the fact that at this very moment, this region is one of the hottest spots on Earth as far as violence is concerned. Therefore, more than ever, it is my fervent wish that mankind will come to its senses, and or will be helped to come to its senses. The sooner the better. I believe that the activities of Unarius and all of you, who I am sure are doing your utmost, are contributing tremendous positive values to the world, so sorely needed, as I feel at this hour here in the Middle East. You'll find out a lot of us have passed with these people. May our expectations for a better world come true in the year to come. In light, I hope I pronounced this right, Daniel van Creveld from Israel.
And we will need just one of these towers, this 2,000 feet tall tower, just one to supply energy to the entire world. Now we will need one substation to project the particular energies to. And from that, each individual home or business can erect upon his house just a small split bulb antenna where he will collect and attract the energies that he needs to him. That will entirely take care of his house, will power his house completely.
So we have a little model here of a Tesla coil. It only takes a few turns, just like this coil over here. The bottom is the primary. Every transformer usually has a primary and a secondary. The secondary coil has all these thousands and thousands of windings. And here is the output device. So the output, in this case, is an RF radio frequency range. It's about, 500,000 cycles per second. And the voltage is probably 250,000 volts. But Nikola Tesla's energy is harmless to human beings. Go ahead and turn it on. Now, Nikola Tesla, in his laboratory in Long Island, New York, he had one of these coils that would light up all kinds of light bulbs around his laboratory, so that they would light up without any wires. And people who would go in there, they were mystified at how he lit up his laboratory. They couldn't figure out where all the light was coming from.
From Hermes' stream.
Now we'll visit with Rana of planet Diva. Greetings, Rana.
You know what, Tracy? It is so good to see you now that we have interplanetary communication.
Before Uriel contacted your planet, I know the people of Diva saw you as a goddess. Why were you so sad?
But I was sad because of those misconceptions and those fears. It was like I wasn't able to complete my mission, or I wasn't doing what I was supposed to be doing with the people. And there was these noxious bands or belts of negative black energies around the planet, and they couldn't seem to understand that it was their fears and misconceptions that were causing that.
Besides giving a projection for the entire planet, what else did Uriel do to help you personally?
She started talking about the conclave in great detail, each little thing, and it reawakened my own memories of having attended, and that was the beginning of my healing. But she continued on. She sent love in the form of a blue beam of energy that entered my forehead, and then it was so unusual. She sent her fragrance, but it wasn't like a flower per se. It was like her whole being and essence. And where we were two people talking to each other, suddenly we were one. It was like she enveloped me and we were one person. And then the last thing, well, she sent so many things, but the one that comes to mind is joy. I don't know how you package and send joy, but she did.
The future of the Earth world is positive, progressive. We promise you, we brothers of the light and space, promise you infinitely and definitely that the future of the Earth world will be a positive, progressive, far less wars and sickness and all the troubles that you have been involved in the past, because Unarius science is a progressive teaching.
Well, some of the illustrations that you saw in the videos were actually done by a student. He had his own psychic contacts with each one of the planets about 7 years after Uriel's initial contact. And he was inspired to draw and color in with gouache, a form of watercolor, these drawings that represented the different planets, showing perhaps the situation that was going on there, Uriel, her projection. And then he presented them at the World Conclave, and it was over 3 days. He presented all 32. And what he said about them is actually in a book that Unarius sells called The Restoration, along with the illustrations. And then we also have made a series of videos called The Restoration that are available, that we show on public access on la36.org, and also that we sell. And so it's a wonderful reattunement to what's going on these planets and understanding the issues that they had. But they have all moved far beyond that. They have a different time than we do. So maybe it seems like 40 years, but for them it may be 200, 300 years, and they've made much progress on their planet. And so that's what we have to look forward to. And then eventually, when they're able to come here to visit, that we would welcome them. They'll bring representatives in all fields, science, medicine, the arts, and they'll meet with their counterparts and help us to help ourselves in learning to use new technologies, like we talked about, the Tesla technology and more, to solve our world problems. So that is very exciting.
So here we are at the Unarius Academy of Science in El Cajon, California, doing our live virtual event. And unfortunately, because of the pandemic, we couldn't have you be here in person. However, what we're going to do now is really exciting. Is we're going to take you on a tour of the center, and you're going to see various artifacts. Different students are going to talk about it, that are a depiction of our positive future, the Interplanetary Confederation, the Power Tower. But what is absolutely wonderful, and I love about Unarius, is as all of we students work out our past karma, we become more creative and inspired and overshadowed by these advanced beings. And everything that you are about to see on our tour was all created by students. And that's the wonderful result, is that creative expression that is so much a part of ourselves, being in tune with their higher selves and be able to bring through information that is of a higher frequency that uplifts you in your consciousness when you see it, when you experience it, much like the painting the Mona Lisa, which was very inspired. And there's a whole story about that in a book that you can learn more about. But at this point, we're going to turn it over to William, who's going to talk about the Interplanetary Confederation.
Thank you. Welcome, welcome, and greetings from the Interplanetary Confederation. I guess this right here behind me is called the star map. It has a central sun, and as you notice, it has particular arms that go out with the 32 other worlds, along with a 33rd world, which hasn't become a member yet, planet Earth. And I'd like to explain why was these 32 worlds contacted, and when. The first contact was in 1973, and how this was done. 4 archangel advanced beings, Michael, Uriel, Raphael, and Muriel. They came together. They're the overseers of the Milky Way galaxy. Well, those 4 came together as one and created what we call the lens. This lens was a communication device, and Uriel used that lens to communicate with these 32 other worlds. And the reason for that is these 32 worlds had become islands among themselves 500,000 years ago. And I believe it was H.G. Wells that did a film on War of the Worlds. This actually really happened, and we were involved. Planet Earth was involved in that. And it caused them to separate themselves. They went into themselves, they isolated themselves, they disconnected themselves from their spiritual heritage. So with these contacts that we've been watching on the films and about how they came together, how the communications took place, they were brought back together. They were reunited, a reunion. And in doing so, that has helped planet Earth. You've heard mentioned that it's a wonder that planet Earth hasn't destroyed itself. But what came to my consciousness is, if it wasn't for this reunion of these 32 other worlds, these 32 different leaders from these other worlds, how they came together and reunited themselves to, like I said, their spiritual heritage, that has saved us as far as giving us the opportunity in the future now to relocate ourselves, our consciousness, to our spiritual heritage. And that will be coming soon, sooner than you think. The other thing too is these worlds have worked so hard to do this. And I have appreciated them so much as I have began studying them more again. The contact that they have made, and also what came into my consciousness, this Interplanetary Confederation is not limited to just these 32 planets and our planet as well. It will continue to grow as long as this consciousness is recognized. Each planet is oscillating and giving so much love to each other. They communicate with each other now, where before they didn't. They traveled from planet to planet with each other. They're totally concerned with their spiritual future, and they're concerned with us too. So we should always be open to these 32 other worlds. And I wanted to relate that when Ruth Norman, overshadowed by Uriel, when she was here in the physical, you hardly ever saw her without a rose. She always had a rose in her hand. And what came into my consciousness today is this rose is now larger than the universe. and that is Uriel's consciousness, her love, her light. And just be aware of that. All of you that are watching today, share it with each and every person that you run into, that this rose is engulfed in so much love and light, and it's enveloping each and every soul on this planet that will help us have that positive and progressive future that Uriel promises, and that will come about in our future. Thank you. And now I'm going to pass the mic over to Lonnie Calvert, and she's in charge, along with Suzanne, with the costume department. Lonnie?
Thank you, William. Good afternoon. You see here 4 costumes from the Unarius costume department. 3 of them were dresses that were worn by Uriel, outfits, costumes. Of course, the students were able to wear them as well once she finished with them. And normally we are upstairs archiving, photographing, preserving the collection. But since we can't be up there today to point out all the different things that are up there like we do in the behind the scenes tour, I'm going to do something a little bit different today. I'm going to focus on her dress and her pendant and what is important about her costumes, the reason why she wears them, which is different than why we might put on a costume, especially a sparkly one, to draw attention to ourselves. For her, it was to make that attunement or help the student, the viewer, to make that attunement with their higher self, with the realms, the 4th dimension, the higher spiritual brothers. And that was what you'll see in a couple of examples, descriptions that I'm going to give. I don't know if you can zoom in a little bit, but even the pattern of the fabric, if you look at the silver and gold lines, they are the pattern of a sine wave. And as was mentioned, this is an energy principle because our whole universe is energy. We are energy beings. And so there she's wearing this energy principle that we discuss in our classes quite a bit. I also want to give an example of, you can show the photograph of her if you like, wearing this dress. And of course she wore it in many different places, but I want to bring one example where in 1975, she went to a psychic convention in Las Vegas at the Hilton. And they took the Power Tower and the Future City mock-ups, which you'll be seeing soon. Well, when they got there, everything was in chaos. It was unorganized. Some of the participants had packed up, they were ready to leave. Everybody was, grumpy. And when she arrived, it was like this beacon of light with these, high frequency ray beams going out of peace and love and positive frequencies. Oh, actually, he's showing the dress that I'm wearing. I forgot to show that. This is actually not a dress, an overlay. And what you're looking at there is the original Power Tower. Or the original mock-up of the future city, which had the spaceships, and there was another version with the crystal cities, and we'll be seeing the 3rd version here today. But again, attuning people to the light. So the dress, if you would, that she's wearing here on the mannequin, there you go. So again, when she arrived at Las Vegas and was radiating all these positive frequencies, slowly the atmosphere became peaceful again. The people who had packed up, ready to leave, were unpacking. They were starting to help each other. So that's an example of, those high frequencies going out. Now, just for a contrast of attunement, the first time that I went there to give some classes and I was walking through the casino, and what I tuned into was the drinking and the smoking and the gambling and the materialism, and I got psychically and physically ill. Now, what she was attuned to, or at least one of the comments that she made was, look at those beautiful crystal chandeliers, you know, they're all over the hotel, and aren't they beautiful? They tune me into the inner planes where they have these electronic mechanisms that provide healing rays for all of the occupants. So she maintained that high consciousness. Now, I don't know, I wasn't there, but I assume since it was a psychic convention that the participants were at least trying to start to develop their clairvoyance. But for the rest of the people who in the casino, and again, I just have to walk through. She was surrounded by it for 4 days, 24 hours a day. And so when they are looking at her, they're looking at this superficial, the dress, the hair, the makeup, the jewelry, etc. So that's where the dress can help reattune the people, the viewers, to their higher selves, but also energies that are stored in their own psychic anatomy. Now, they're not going to be conscious of this, but when they see this, when they feel her frequencies, it's going to resonate something that's been dormant within them. Maybe when they were with her in a different civilization, maybe with another master teacher, like the apex of Atlantis or Lemuria, to the higher planes. And hopefully that's like a seed in the future that's going to come to fruition, positivity, and when they're ready to make that move forward in their own progressive evolution. So that's an example of where she wore it, and wonderful things happen. Of course, it's not the dress, but that's part of the attunement. So I'll bring this over a little bit, maybe you can zoom in on it. But this medallion that she's wearing, initially it wasn't jewelry. It was given to her psychically, spiritually. And this was back in 1956 when the moderator, Ernest L. Norman, the co-founder of Unarius, had just finished channeling the first voice of the pulse of creation. And Uriel had the tremendous task of turning those words that he channeled into a book. So when she first got together with him, she didn't even know how to type. So she was taking things down in shorthand. So she had to learn to type. She had to learn to use a Verityper. The whole process of turning these words into, hardcover book. Now we have, online publishing. It's fairly simple comparatively. But when she brought home that first book, the spiritual beings on the inner planes came through Dr. Norman, and they were congratulating them on, what this meant for the earth world. But they also wanted to personally provide a token of their esteem, their love for Uriel. And so psychically, they placed this emblem around her neck. And it wasn't like a talisman or a charm. It was just, again, an expression of their appreciation. And if you can maybe zoom in on it, you'll see it's got 7 points like a star, the longer points, and then it's got 26 shorter ones in between, like, starlight beams. And at the end of each one, there is a round crystal, and in the center, it's like a ruby red heart. Now, at that point in time, again, it was 1956, and she hadn't made the contact with the other 32 worlds. So this wasn't about the Interplanetary Confederation per se. But what they were representing were the 33 logoi on the inner planes. And so that's the 33 points. And again, it could have been made with a ruby and real diamonds and solid gold, but she would never do that, because this is a nonprofit organization. And so any monies were fed back into printing more books and distributing the information to people who are ready for it, into the educational foundation. So that is, I assume later on she had the physical representation made, because again, that would be helpful to the viewers. And that's the whole purpose of her costumes. I'm going to turn over to Suzanne. She's going to describe the costume that the male model is wearing, male mannequin.
Yes, welcome to our little costume room here we have. And I just want to say that Uriel, she really had her students and liked her students to tune into their highest potential creativity. And she worked very closely with seamstress and students, guiding them to see her inner vision of the costumes that she wanted to create. So a lot of her creativity in costumes depicted spiritual suns, light and golden sun ray beams, and also galactic stars. So this costume that I'm wearing, Uriel wore out at the landing site, the Unarius landing site, with a television interview. And this dress, I can see if I can spread the thing out here. Oh, you're looking at the picture. Yes, that is the picture of her in the dress. The dress is, I would say that this dress is like a lighted dress, one of her lighted dresses. It sparkles with multicolors, and it also has very, very interesting fabric. And it's called eyelash, an eyelash fabric. And it has like little limar textures to it that reflect light. Also, Lonnie, actually, go over to Lonnie. Lonnie, I don't think the audience got to see her dress. She can open that up there. Overlay, her overlay. Great. And this costume was put together by one of the students who was doing a scene for one of the Unarius planes. And he put this together for that scene. But these costumes, there's lots of costumes that have futuristic styling to them and space travel type styling to them. This picture is a tableau representing the 7 Unarian interplanes of light. It's a teaching plane. The name of the plane is Hermes, and it's the plane of philosophy. So the 7 teaching planes were inner planes of study, where students can go and study with masters from the hierarchy, the Unarian hierarchy, and the masters would guide the students to tune into their higher selves and study the Unarian teachings. So the student on the right is wearing the Grecian era costume. Down at the bottom is the ancient China. On the other side is the Eastern Indian costume. And then we have 17th century America. In the middle is the now. And then the one up at the top there is the Atlantean costume. This student is studying the Unarius teachings through his mind and energies, looking at the crystal sphere. So Uriel prompted the students to go up to the costume room and tune into their higher selves and select a costume that would relate to them, to how they would feel. So that is it for the costume room. And Lonnie, back to you.
Yeah. And so if you watch any of the Unarius programs, you'll probably run into one of our psychodramas that was used as a tool for making the past a reality. So it's easy to say, oh, well, yeah, maybe I was that person, but I really don't know for sure. But when you go upstairs and you pick out the costume and you're interacting with other students, you are reliving, you're replaying something that's in your psychic anatomy. It's information that you've stored there. It's energy that goes with you from lifetime to lifetime. And when you see yourself back in these videos, what you say, there's no script. So whatever comes out, you know, it's just, that's what's inside you. Again, stored in your psychic hard drive. So that's a healing, one of the healing tools that we use. And the costumes help the students to get into consciousness with these time periods other than the present, right? So when you put this on and again, you're in a scene that we've put together, the everything that is done, the sets and the filming and the costumes was all done by the students, as was mentioned earlier. That's a form of creativity. So next to the costume room upstairs, there's an area where they did a lot of the filming, and you can watch a behind the scenes tour if you want to see more, where she and I have talked about the other things that you would see in the costume room. So now we're going to pass the microphone to David Reynolds to talk about the Power Tower.
Thank you. Well, good afternoon. Hopefully you're enjoying our conclave event. And a few years ago, several students of Unarius got together and built this mock-up of a power tower. Now we've named it in Nikola Tesla's honor, calling it the Tesla Power Tower. This device is already designed on the inner worlds. Before I mentioned the plane of Eros, which is devoted to science, this is already a technology designed on the inner worlds of light. So even though Nikola Tesla planted the seeds for it, it will be built sometime in our future. Now, there are places on planet Earth where there's certain electromagnetic lines of force crisscross. We call it a parallax. And that is where we can build this tower to utilize or tap into the greatest amount of cosmic energies that are penetrating or permeating our planet Earth. This particular power tower will stand 2,000 feet high. It will go into the ground 1,000 feet, and it will tap into the energies that are subterranean and in the atmosphere. So utilizing the principle similar to the laser beam, a laser beam will be oscillated between, or laser-like energy, I should say, will be oscillated between two crystals. And the oscillation will build up to such an intensity that on the top, the output device will be a matrix of lenses and crystals that will project out in a coherent beam of energy. And it will send out a coherent beam of energy to all the places on planet Earth, like London, like Los Angeles, like New York, like Beijing, like Tokyo. And you will have a step-down receiver to step down the energies for household current or industrial use. So this will be built in our future. Every one of the other 32 other worlds already have this power tower built. And when planet Earth becomes a member, the 33rd member of the Interplanetary Confederation, and have the power tower turned on, you'll have 33 magnificent power towers all activated and aligned to the inner worlds. And this particular technology we're talking about has an alignment to the inner worlds of light. So it has a lot of capability. So this is a beautiful future technology that will come about in our future. It'll be an exciting day to have this power tower finally turned on, and where the lines of force or the beams of energy that crisscross and interact, they will form a nodal point between the planets, and there will be extra energies there to tap into. This will be a magnificent. Imagine, if you will, receiving classes from another world. Say in the Pleiades, there's a planet called Vixal, and they're really good at robotics. Imagine attending a class here virtually with a power tower able to receive energy from this other world. It's more usage that I can go into, but this is an incredible positive part of our future and providing fuel for planet Earth. And now I would like to turn it over to Lonnie Calvert, who will talk about a future model city for planet Earth.
Thank you, David, because that power tower is going to be seen here in our future city. But first of all, I want to talk about how this future city came about. Uriel, when she was on the inner planes and saw these beautiful crystalline glowing cities, was so inspired, and she said, you know, not everybody's psychic, that's our future, but I would like to bring down into the third dimension a replica of these cities so that people can attune to their future. At that time, the center wasn't built yet, so students would come after work and work on building it in her home. So you just saw David present the power tower, and that's what we have in the center. It's going to provide all of the wireless free energy that you've been hearing about up till now. In the center, there are concentric rings coming out from the power tower. Closest to it is the industrial area, and then there's the commercial buildings. You don't see that, but what you are seeing that's so colorful is the residential areas. And if you look closely, the yellow circles, pale yellow circles, that's where the communities, you could say, the people that like to live in someplace like New York City, where they're very close to their neighbors, that's where they would live. So they have the high rises, but there's space in between them, so it's not like they're blocking each other out. But if you like more space, like you like to live out in the country, in between those circles, you'll see all of these different geometric patterns. Those are all flowers, parkland, gardens. It's one of the joys of the people to create, design, and maintain these garden areas. You can't see the houses, they're too small, but you know, everybody has their space if that's how they want to live in these beautiful areas. Then the blue areas are pools or lakes, and you'll see some of them in natural state, and then you'll see the typical circles and squares and so forth, but there's also hexagons and amygdaloids and trapezoids and other geometric patterns. There's a small dark spot maybe on your screen in the middle of the pools. That's actually a fountain. So almost all of the pools, I think all of them have these beautiful fountains in the middle too. So that's makes them lovely. The wall that surrounds the city is, just for perspective, 100-foot high alabaster, and it's got a walkway on the top. So anywhere that you walk around the city, you have a great view of the whole city. These also have observatories placed around them. So at night you can look up at the planets, and unlike our telescopes, which have a certain limitation, of course, they're going to be much more advanced in the future. Instead of just seeing a ball with some dark spots, you can actually see the topography of the planet, and more than that if you like. So that's a nice form of entertainment for them as well. Spaced within the wall, you see 7 temples. The whole city is like a pie with 7 slices or triangles. And these round buildings are temples, not religious places, but more like auditoriums. They have educational programs, they have music and dance and the arts, concerts, etc. So that's a nice place to go to relax and refresh. And in the ceilings, they also have the lenses that were talked about earlier that provide healing energies for the people that are there. So wonderful places to go to relax. Now, a couple things that you don't see here. Well, you might have seen the lines going between different areas of the city, and those straight lines connecting our walkways. They're not just, you know, like a cement walkway, but they're moving walkways, kind of like you may have seen in some of the airports have them now, like where it's a really long distance to get to your next flight. They have some of these moving sidewalks. There is no pollution, there's no cars, so we don't have any, you have sweet smelling, clean air. But even if there was some form of pollution from somewhere, again, the Tesla tower could clean that up quickly. But the other forms of transportation are overhead monorails. Again, you won't see this in the mock-up. And they also have something that which I loved, which kind of like the cockpit of a glass front of a helicopter, but without the blade and the motor and the tail. And these bubbles are self-driving. And so they're also automated in the sense of you can just voice where you want to go and they take care of the rest of it. So many years ago, that might have sounded really fantastic. However, nowadays that we have self-driving automotive cars on the near horizon, that shouldn't be too hard to conceive. So these bubble vehicles are great for going distances like 100 miles or so. Now, if you need to go to other parts of the planet or other planets, you would use a spaceship. So they have the technology, as was mentioned earlier, of using the rays from the power tower and also their understanding of electromagnetic fields and repulsion and attraction and so forth. So that's really fascinating. But one more aspect I wanted to talk about, you can't really see it here, but is building materials, because I love architecture. And one of the building materials that they use, and again, this was inspired from the inner planes where they build with mental energies and crystals and so forth, which obviously we don't have here in the third dimension. So they use a isotopic form of plastic. Now this is, when you're standing outside, it's opaque but reflective. When you're on the inside of the building, it's transparent, and it provides for air conditioning, heating, light. The walls can turn different colors, so that's really cool. But also because of the understanding of the people, and especially the engineers, of the different forces that come into planet Earth and into the buildings. We're aware of forces such as the gravitational field and the electromagnetic field, but there's so many other forces, and their understanding of these, and also how specific frequencies affect the human body, they can use that to polarize and filter the light coming into the building so that it is regenerative to the physical anatomy of the people. And it also can uplift their consciousness to a transcendency. So it really is a nice, relaxing place to go home. So your next question might be, well, when are we going to have it here? Well, if you look around how we have used our time and intelligence and money for wars, for hurting other people, if we took all of those resources and put them into helping other people, then we would make progress very rapidly. And also the people on the other 32 worlds would get that welcome, that sign of welcome. And so when we're ready to do that, well, actually before that time, you can come down as soon as COVID is over and you can see this for yourself up close. So I hope you enjoyed a preview of our future city. Oh, and by the way, Tracy and Celeste are also wearing costumes from the costume department.
So a comment about the future city. We've had a group that was touring things of architectural interest that were architecture students on sabbatical from Harvard come and view our future city. We had a group come and visit from the Strelka Institute in Russia, and they are the architects for future urban areas. So people could already be working on designing these future cities. They were definitely asking many, many questions, and I'm sure it sparked a lot of ideas for them. So we are sadly done today. It was very fantastic, amazing, loved it, especially for our first virtual event. But tomorrow at 4 o'clock Pacific time, we have our transmission with the Space Brothers, 3 students who are able to put their thoughts aside, tune up, and receive these messages. And we usually always hear from 1 or 2 of the Space Brothers as an update and wonderful words of encouragement, tremendous power projection, because everyone that participates is part of that energy that's going out. We're all lifted up in consciousness, and so important for all of us because we are the light bearers for Earth's positive future. So if you'd still like to participate tomorrow, we ask that you register today. You can go to unarius.org, and at the top under special events, when you click on it, you'll see there's a link to go register. And then tomorrow, probably by 3:45 for everyone who registered, we'll be sending an email to you directly with a link to click on. It'll be different than today in that way. So we hope as many of you as possible can join us tomorrow.
And thank you for everybody for participating. And by your taking part in our event today, you're demonstrating your commitment to being part of our Earth's positive future. And if you would like to learn more about Unarius, check out our website. We have several websites. Check out our classes and be part of Earth's positive future. And thank you to everybody today who helped put on the event, because it was absolutely fantastic to taste what our positive future is all about.
What is our website's address?
unarius.org.
Or email us, uriel@unarius.org. And we have a YouTube channel, Unarius 33, and no doubt we'll have some clips from today posted on the YouTube channel to watch once again, or if you missed part of it, you'll be able to see more. Thank you.
Bye.